The sky over Kaido Basin looked like a sheet of dented copper, bruised by explosions and streaked with the plasma contrails of interceptors. A dust storm, kicked up by the combined fury of artillery and atmosphere scrubbers, pulsed across the dry lake bed, and the grit found every seam in my exoplate suit. Despite the chaos, my job was, in theory, simple. Listen. I was Dr. Ray Santos, xenolinguist, embedded with the 73rd Terran Recon as a battlefield cultural liaison. Command had imagined I might negotiate a ceasefire or translate surrender terms. No one mentioned that the Kel sang in the middle of combat, their weapon systems literally harmonizing with them, nor that, if I didn't decode their lyrics, my entire company might be vaporized before sundown. The Kel had crested the western ridge at dawn, angular silhouettes refracted by heat shimmer, bodies glittering with bioceramic armor. Instead of the standard tactical barks that human infantry used through microlinks, these aliens chanted, long guttural drones laced with clicking uptones. Our forward observers first described it as a choir of tree frogs arguing with didgeridoos. I watched their phalanx advance in perfect step, each soldier swaying as though tethered by invisible threads. Above them, shoulder-mounted targeting arrays sprouted like black magnolia buds, adjusting with every tonal modulation. In archive footage I'd studied on Luna, the arrays acquired and fired on targets faster than conventional algorithms. The Kel literally sang their commands into the hardware, substituting code with cadence. The idea had fascinated me in the lab. In person, with plasma lances stitching the dirt around my boots, fascination curdled into terror. Lieutenant Harewood dragged me behind a half-collapsed cargo crawler. Santos, command needs live intel. Can you crack what they're saying? Shrapnel pinged against the crawler's plating, metal whining. My translation deck was a wrist-mounted slate patched into the platoon's sensor net. I flipped it open, fed the ambient audio into a rolling spectrogram, and tried to steady my breathing long enough for the algorithms to yield something besides a rainbow smear of noise. Not yet, I admitted. The lieutenant's face tightened. I heard the unspoken arithmetic, not yet equals too late. The Kel chant climbed a whole register, like a wave rearing up. Our railgun emplacement, 300 meters to the east, shuddered and erupted in a white corolla of plasma, blooming into a mushroom of metal petals. The gun crew's screams clipped across the open channel before cutting to static. The Kel hadn't even looked in that direction. Their song had done the aiming for them. I forced myself to tune out the carnage and listen. The Kel language, as catalogued from captured transmissions, employed two parallel streams, a consonantal drone that carried syntax and an overlay of harmonics that conveyed tactical metadata, range, vector, munition type. What no one had realized was how intimately those harmonics mapped to the resonant frequency tables in their hardware. Each note was both instruction and energy pulse, slipping directly into the targeting array's piezoelectric core. In essence, the soldiers weren't telling their weapons where to fire. They were the weapons unified by a vibratory grammar. If that were true, then disrupting the chant, scrambling the grammar mid-sentence, might confuse the arrays. But wideband jamming wouldn't work. The chant changed pitch signatures every 2 seconds, randomized like a code one-time pad. We tried that on Iosian Ridge and lost an entire armored column for nothing. We needed something precise, conjugated. We needed to speak back. Except none of us could imitate Kel vocal tracks. Their lower mandibles produced sublaryngeal rumbles a human chest couldn't manage without tearing alveoli. But reproduction wasn't the only way to wield language. There was mirroring, tracking a signal, phase inverting it, and feeding it back until the original construct collapsed under destructive interference. The Kel sang, I could countersing with machines. Santos, Harewood barked, ideas? He had that battlefield patience where every second already felt like too many seconds. I need a directed speaker, something that can project narrow beam audio at 40 kilohertz and above, and I need it patched into my deck. He nodded once and shouted for Tech Sergeant Brahm. Minutes later, Brahm slid beside us, lugging a long gray cylinder, a defunct anti-riot infrasonics cannon repurposed for crowd dispersal in colonial insurrections. She's busted, Brahm warned. Amplifier board shorted during drop. Show me. I peeled back the side panel. The power rail was fused, but the driver coils looked intact. If I bypassed the rail and throttled straight from a suit pack, I yanked my auxiliary battery, jammed the leads into the coil bus, and prayed the output wouldn't fry every micro in my deck. Blue status LEDs winked alive. Good enough. Data streamed across my slate. I set the software to live capture, instructing it to parse consonantal drones into a morphosyntactic tree. Each branch corresponded to a battlefield function: target acquisition, range gating, friend-foe ID. When the Kel vocalized Jakajgre Toksil, the array slewed left, Jakajgre Toksil, me, added altitude compensation. I couldn't duplicate the raw phonemes, but I could invert their harmonic overtones and layer them onto the same fundamental. The result wouldn't sound like Kel to a biological ear, but to an array's microphone it would look like corrupted metadata, a packet that promised meaning, failed checksum, and crashed the parser. Brahm hauled the cannon onto a stack of supply crates that had become our ad hoc parapet. He fixed the muzzle at the enemy ridge, while I tethered my slate with a fiber lead. Dust fled before a fresh gust, revealing the Kel advance, now less than 400 meters out. Their chant had shifted again, faster, likely painting new coordinates on our mortar pit. I barely noticed the mortar crew sprinting for cover. I was inside the sound, hearing its scaffolding, predicting its next clause like a poet finishing someone else's meter. Program compiled, I whispered. My thumb hovered above execute. I looked at Harewood. He made the sign of the cross on the barrel's side, a secular superstition, and nodded. I pressed. The cannon exhaled a barely audible hiss. Its dish focused the beam into a pencil-thin lance of ultrasound that rippled the air with shimmering heat. For 3 terrifying seconds, nothing happened, and I wondered if I'd just wasted our last battery. Then the Kel formation faltered. Their chant hiccuped in mid-refrain. One warrior's targeting array over-rotated, sweeping erratically until the barrel sheared from its mount. Another array fired into the dirt at its owner's feet, launching the alien backward in a spray of molten glass sand. Across their line, the harmony dissolved into clashing notes like an orchestra forgetting the key signature. Plasma bolts intended for our mortar pit scorched empty sky, leaving our crew miraculously untouched. The platoon, stunned, realized the window I'd opened. "All units, advance!" Harewood bellowed. Exos thrummed as soldiers leapt the crawler and surged forward. I kept the beam locked, adjusting modulation whenever the Kel tried to write their melody. Fragment grenades arced overhead. The basin turned into a thunderdrum. But language is adaptive, doubly so when its speakers feel it dying. Within minutes, the Kel rallied behind a tri-vocal cantor, an officer, or maybe simply a singer of superior lung capacity. Their voice bounced off the cliffs, threading through my interference pattern, searching for gaps the way vines find trellis holes. I watched my algorithm struggle, red flags blooming on the interface as the Kel introduced microtonal bends I hadn't mapped. Their arrays started realigning, albeit groggily. One more evolutionary step, and I'd lose the advantage. I toggled a private channel to Brahm. I need higher bandwidth, full audio, not just harmonics. Can't. The coil will overheat. Then give me more power for 5 seconds and get ready to replace it. I set a timer. He cursed but splayed fingers against the coil's housing, calculated risk, then jacked in a second battery from the crawler's reserve. I dove deeper into the chant. The tri-vocals pattern formed a recursive spiral. Each phrase embedded a compressed checksum of the last. So if a phrase failed, the next could be decoded by subtracting the checksum, restoring the original. It was linguistic error correction, ingenious and formidable. To break it, I couldn't merely invert notes. I had to scramble the checksum itself so thoroughly that the correction layer reconstituted nonsense. That meant injecting false clauses at the perfect juncture, substituting valid consonantal drones with phonetically admissible but semantically void ones. Linguistic chaff. I hacked together a probabilistic generator, training it on the snippets I'd already gathered, teaching it to speak fluent gibberish, utterances with impeccable Kel morphology and zero referential content. The generator spat out lines. I piped them through a vocoder, mapped their pitch contour onto the cannon's carrier wave, and waited for the coil temperature warning to light scarlet. 3, 2, now, Brahm shouted. I fired the burst. The muzzle glowed cherry. Somewhere across the basin, the tri-vocal's chant fractured like ice under a sledge. The correction spiral collapsed, loops feeding back until the entire choir spiraled into an algorithmic stutter. Targeting arrays seized mid-rotation and froze. Some detonated where they sat, sprinkling the formation with shrapnel. The human advance hit the Kell line with ferocity. I glimpsed arc blades cleaving armor seams, gauss slugs punching thoraxes. For a moment I succumbed to the ancient mammal urge to revel in victory until a thermal spike on my slate dragged me back. The coil hadn't survived the overload. Secondary windings fused, and a thin tendril of smoke curled from the barrel. The beam was dead. We'd bought minutes, nothing more, and the Kell still had numbers. Across the ridge I saw reserves gearing up, their arrays glossy, untouched by sabotage. If they joined, the chant could resume anew, unmarred by my tricks. We needed a final stroke, something not merely disruptive but transformative. Turn their own language against them in a way they couldn't patch with new singers. Harewood jogged over, rifle slung. That last blast saved our hides. Tell me you've got another. Not with that speaker. I chewed my lip. But maybe without hardware. Maybe through theirs. What are you thinking? The Kell treat language as authentication. If I can embed a falsified root command in their checksum spiral, I might reclassify every human biosign as ally. Their arrays would refuse to shoot us, no matter who leads the chant. He stared. You can do that? I can try, but I need a clearer sample from a command-level singer, and I need proximity. He considered the distance, about 250 meters through a kill zone, rich with ricochets and burning debris. Take Fire Team Gamma. They'll get you close. I slung my deck, cinched the suit seals, and followed Gamma. Corporal Sevgi, twins Liu and Liu 2, everyone called them that because Command couldn't spare brain cycles for first names, and Specialist Ellerby, who carried the squad's drone swarm in a backpack canister. We bounded crater to crater, crouching under lines of suppressive fire. The Kell, still reorganizing, responded sluggishly. Their frontline arrays misidentified us as geological anomalies. A statistical impossibility I found encouraging. At 120 meters, we stopped behind a toppled gun carapace. Sevgi popped a mirror shard over the rim. Command singer, that one with the triple crest, dead center. Through binoculars, I saw the tri-vocal, taller, crest flaring like a bronze sail. They bellowed ragged instructions, voice hoarse from countering my interference. Perfect. I flipped on my recorders. Every syllable they uttered was a key to the encryption vault. Drone time, Ellerby said. He released 2 wing lozenges that zipped low across the sand, hugging thermals. Their sensors fed directly to my deck, stereo imaging the tri-vocal's throat sacs. I compiled a command packet, a morphological template starting with the imperative prefix, Dirac, Kunakin established Chirn link, followed by a lexeme denoting kin recognition, then the argument placeholder, biosign signature B, which in Kell military dialect defaulted to emitters broadcasting the same chant. I tweaked that value to match the Terran IFF spectrum, an elegant cheat. Finally, I appended a polite evidential marker. Kell High Command required it to avoid fratricide. The result, if accepted, would propagate across every array still listening for corrections, but to send it, I lacked a speaker, unless I use theirs. Ellerby, can you patch my output through that drone, then route through the tri-vocal's own array mic? Maybe if the drone docks on the array, piggybacks the input port. He grinned. Going for linguistic Trojan horse. I like it. We selected the smaller drone, fried its weapon payload to free bandwidth, and uploaded my packet as an audio file, a brief, low-energy chirp that, to a human ear, sounded like a hiccup played backward. Timing was everything. The drone had to inject the packet during a rest beat in the chant, when the array awaited the next clause. Sevgi pinched the transmit stud. The drone rocketed up, weaving through debris plumes until it hovered inches behind the tri-vocal's shoulder. The Kell commander never noticed. On my monitor, the array's mic registered the chirp, flagged it as continuance, and spooled it into its parser. Subroutines propagated, glyphs scrolled. A string of green ACK symbols ignited on my screen. The battlefield stilled, as though someone had lowered a cosmic fader. The Kell ranks quit singing mid-breath, gauntlets loosening grip on rifles. Their arrays swiveled, scanned, and finding no enemies, simply dimmed to standby. One warrior pulled the trigger experimentally. Nothing. The weapon refused, citing friend fire protocol. Our soldiers advanced unopposed, bewildered at first. Then cheers erupted across channels. Some Kell surrendered on instinct, mandibles parted in puzzlement. Others stood silent, awaiting commands that would never come. Their fortress of song collapsed from within by a single counterfeit lyric. Not a shot was fired as we corralled them. The tri-vocal knelt in the dust, crest wilted. They looked up at me, our eyes leveled by circumstance. I almost apologized, but what words bridge that gulf? Instead, I offered the universal sign for listening, a finger to the ear, palm open. They exhaled a note, plaintive, bereft of harmonic support. I didn't parse it through my slate. I let it wash over me raw. It sounded like morning. Hours later in the med tent glow, Harewood found me hunched over a mug of electrolyte broth, still wearing the translator earpiece. "How many languages you speak now?" he teased, trying for levity. "After today, one more than yesterday, but maybe none well enough." I gestured at the captured arrays stacked like defanged cobras. "We won because I weaponized their trust in language. They'll patch the flaw quickly, and next time they might decide language is a liability." He sat opposite. "Wars end when someone runs out of tricks. You gave us a day. Maybe that day is the difference between survival and extermination." I wanted to agree, but I kept hearing the tri-vocal's last note, looping in the recess of my skull. It wasn't anger, not even fear. It was disorientation, the sound an explorer makes when the compass suddenly points nowhere. I had been that compass. There was work ahead, debriefs, ethics committees, demobilization of captured tech. Command already envisioned fleets of human drones singing our own lethal areas. They'd ask me to refine the algorithm, to strip the alien beauty from it and leave only the efficient core. And I, academic mercenary, would do so because survival always trumped aesthetics. Still, I wondered, if language could be code, code could be language. Perhaps someday we'd trade not gunfire or counterfeit commands, but genuine conversations, sung across carved canyons, resonant enough to bridge the chasms I deepened today. I set the thought aside like a delicate artifact, wrapped in hope, and closed my eyes. The basin air smelled of ozone and dust, but beneath it lingered the faintest aftertaste of music, discordant, wounded, yet stubbornly alive.